Welcome to Cosmic Imprint, a podcast bringing you weekly goodness as the home of lightworkers, new paradigm leaders, sensitive souls, magical beings, spiritual seekers and both spiritual CEOs alike, who are ready to live life in alignment with your own soul's truth and who are here to buck the trends, color outside the lines, thriving in this lifetime's incarnation. Join me each week for conversations about all things human design, weaving my own soul magic where I'll share my intuitive gifts, love of all things metaphysical, manifestation, mindset, fifth dimension, spirit guides, light beings, and beyond. Let's explore your cosmic imprint together. Hello, my dearest earthling. Welcome to another episode of Cosmic Imprint. My name is Rose, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me listening in today. Well, it is a week since I recorded a very vulnerable podcast episode, so thank you so much for everyone who listened in to last week, the previous episode before this one. And I just am so humbled by all of your messages. And it's been like, hashtag I'm not crying, you're crying, right in the open solar plexus feels. And in this episode, I'm sticking with the intuition of just going with what I am being guided to share. And so this continues my new approach with the podcast of ditching the logical planning strategy and simply just recording what my guides are prompting me, we'll say, to share with you. And so today we're talking about timing and divine timing and being empowered within your own unique divine timing. Now, this awareness of time and perfect timing and divine timing and the cycles of time, the seasonality of time and timing, is very much tied to, for me personally, and this is where we're going to begin this episode, in the splenic center, the spleen. And I only have one gate activated in my undefined splenic center, and that is gate 28, which is kind of what this episode is all about unpacking and talking about, really. It is both in my conscious design, which means I have a black line, and unconscious as well, a red line. And of course, as I record this episode, the sun is currently transiting through gate 28. So I felt like this is the perfect moment to speak to this energy and to share the message around this that I had been kind of guided towards getting on this podcast and chatting about. So the gift of gate 28 in our human design is all about cultivating your own awareness of timing and learning to transform and heal any soul fears you might have around running out of time or that there isn't enough time. And something that I fucking love to talk about in our Soulpreneur businesses is having an awareness of the many different energetic cycles and examples of divine timing that we experience both collectively and individually. And of course, being empowered within your own divine timing as part of that. So just a quick refresher on the splenic center. If you're listening to this going, shit, which one's that again? It's a home of our six senses, our intuitive magic, and kind of like the ancient art of self-preservation. So it's commonly referred to as the home of our fears as well. But they're very much the fears that come from that art of self-preservation, basically, of, what is going to keep us safe, what is going to keep us fed, what is going to keep us, healthy, what is going to stop us from being eaten by the lion, right? And it's found, your splenic center is found in your human design chart on the far left-hand side when you're looking at it. And it's a triangular shape with kind of the tip of the triangle facing towards the right. Now, depending on your chart, you might have this colored in, which means it's defined, or white with a line or several lines attached, because there's several different gates that could be activated. In that case, it's undefined or white and with nothing at all attached, like none of the, no lines attached to it, and that would be completely open. So within this gives us a really clear understanding of our own unique soul fears that we've come here with, but also the potential intuitive gifts and awareness we have also come here with. And you can think of each of the different gates of the spleen as specific soul lessons that you've come here with and will always have with you. So they're kind of like the little karmic journeys that we're on, where the goal isn't to try and get rid of them, erase them, eradicate them from our life, but to learn how to cultivate your awareness of them. And basically what that means is to have awareness, bring your attention to what it is, and then to go about actively living and breathing them in their highest vibrational potential and kind of greatest positive expression. So it's like the gift you get is transforming it, and then still having it within you, it always potentially is going to keep coming up in a number of different situations, different number of different scenarios. There might be a number of different lessons that it kind of presents itself within. So you're not trying to run away from it or avoid it or erase them, but to make friends with them and to understand and to kind of gain the gift of it, living it in its highest vibrational expression. So in the example of this energy that we're all currently collectively feeling and experiencing right now, that energy of gate 28 is asking us to transform from the low vibe kind of feeling of I'm running out of time in life, or I've missed the boat, or there's not enough time for me to get everything done, and to completely flip the script and go, hey, you know what? I have this real inner knowing, this sixth sense intuition about timing and divine timing, and I understand time, and I empower others to understand their own divine timing, and even to potentially get into the realms of what is time even, right? So it is no wonder that this being my, only gate activated in my splenic center, and it comes through in both my conscious and subconscious gates, which means it shows in my chart what I see is a line effectively split down the middle that's half red and half black in this case. And also in this case for me, it's activated by Pluto in my human design, the planetary activation. So Pluto is all about, intense soul transformation, death, big death rebirth vibes. And so this conversation around time and divine timing is something I'm realizing more and more and more that I'm here to share and talk about and empower people, just like you're listening in, about on this episode. And in terms of empowering others, because you may not have this in your human design, but we all collectively experience it. Say, for example, in this moment right now when I'm recording it, when it's the sun's transiting this. And so we have, approximately just under a week of being in this energy. So, and also you'll connect with other people who might have this activated, and it might, set off some conditioning within your own design, or you might, be absorbing that energy in your own chart. So it's important to understand that even if you don't necessarily have it, you will have times when it comes up for you, and you will, navigate this energy. So in my own personal lived experience, I guess what I'll also talk about here is that I have an undefined root chakra. I have 7 undefined and open centers. So the undefined root chakra, I find, also plays a big part in how I uniquely experience this gate 28 energy, because my undefined root at times in my life has been driven and fueled by that fear coming from my splenic center. So even though they're not connected, they're not defined, there's no channels running between them, that fear of running out of time in my life, back when I was kind of, like just moseying around in my pre-human design life, my pre-spiritual reconnection and reawakening life, right? And going through my toughest times with burnout and hustle culture and working 80-hour weeks, the whole, shebang. And that was very much, I now have the awareness of that being driven by the fear of not getting everything done on the to-do list, right? Not achieving all the things, not achieving enough, running out of time for all the things, with that underlying sort of fear driving it all of, if I don't get this all done today, if I run out of time to do it all this, in this day, in this week, in this month, if I don't achieve that, then I am a shitter of a human being, basically. Like, if I don't get it all done, if I don't tick everything off this enormous to-do list that I've got done, and I run out of time, then I am never going to be successful. I am never going to achieve success. And, basically, I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to get there. So that fear of running out of time was super intertwined with my projector success, alignment feeling, and kind of amplified by that undefined root as well. So yeah, it always endlessly fascinates me how these things, they don't just operate in isolation, right? When we look at a chart, when we look at someone's human design, we have to look at it as a whole. And so for me, I find that, the real gift in this is the understanding and kind of breaking apart those notions and feelings. It's like kind of like getting in there and like separating them all apart and going, actually, you know what? I understand that time is a complete artificial construct, right? Time is just something that somebody has denominated, that this is the number of minutes and hours and seconds we have in a day. That time, the calendar system, all of these things are constructs. And even when it comes down to timing in life, right, of when we are we have the societal conditioning or expectations around the time that we do certain things in life, or are supposed to have, say, achieved certain milestones or attributes, or, gained certain things before a certain time, right? Like, there's so many things that hinge around time when actually it's all complete bullshit, right? And we all have our own unique timing. So what I have, developed and come to bring an awareness to in my own life is that my success is not defined by the number of things I cram onto my to-do list, and that in aligned timing, right, when I'm living my strategy, when I'm living my authority, when I am embodying my human design, the universe does the heavy lifting, right? The universe is doing 99% of the work behind the scenes, and it's like, I know now that it is entirely possible to quantum leap forward in terms of success and abundance and manifestations, right? But it is also perfectly aligned and divine timing for me to sometimes go through the more 3D physical aspect of time, in terms of the fact that something might wait to manifest, or there might be a journey that I go on before the thing that I thought I wanted, so desperately, actually turns out to be something even better. And it's by going on this other journey that might be a windy road and it might take much longer, and all of those things that actually, in fact, that might be completely aligned with my soul. And it's like my human is busy going, no, but I want this thing over here immediately because of, again, running out of time, right? Like, we have to do it quickly. I have to get there fastest. I have to hustle, I have to grind, and I have to push in order to get there quickly. When actually, if I just take that step back and take a breather and go, actually, you know what? I don't have to, Okay, if it comes, it comes. If I release and let go of the grip and go, you know what? Universe, like, I've set my desire, this is my, desire, and this or something even better is the approach I take to everything. In many ways, the something even better that comes along is always working out for my highest good, right? So the other learning around time for me that I wanted to share is the cyclical nature of time and timing, and the seasonality of time and timing, and that everything in this world that we live in is a season, a cycle, a polarity to it, and we get to experience that, right? And Mother Nature, of course, is our greatest teacher in this. However, I know that I certainly was not raised with an understanding of that. Okay, if you didn't grow up in a household that followed, moon cycles or menstrual cycles or seasonal cycles, if you are not alone. I didn't grow up with any knowledge about things like moons, planets, nature, inner, hormonal or like menstrual cycles. Like, yeah, as someone, who experiences that, it is really fascinating to me that like none of that was in my awareness growing up. It wasn't something that was brought into place in our life. And we were very much like, I was raised kind of as like a slave to the calendar, right? Like that, there are 365 days in the year, and there are, 24 hours in a day. And this is how you jam pack that calendar as full as possible with as many things as possible and as many, productivity, adjacent, things. And if you have a free day, you have to put something on it because, this needs to happen this week. And, just such a like slave to that time relation of like an artificial calendar, right? Like no harmony with seasons or cycles. So I just wanted to say that first and foremost, that if you didn't, if you weren't raised in that or taught that from an early age, please know that you are not alone, and it is okay to come to this at whatever timing is right for you, right? Like sometimes I think when we, delve into our, our soul business and our spiritual businesses and things like that, we sometimes can get a little bit like, oh my God, I'm only just discovering this, or like I haven't been living this sort of, very in tune, nature, witchy life for as long as that other person. So, what does that reflect on me or anything? And it doesn't mean anything, right? Like, if anything, it means that your soul had other things to learn from doing it the other way, right? Like from going through all those experiences and coming to this at the right timing for you, and coming to this after you've gone through the soul growth and the expansion and the learnings and the opportunities that you can then take and use and share the transformational gift around, like the nugget of gold that came from that in your Soulpreneur business, right? So anyway, these things, the moon and cosmos and planets and our inner cycles and our, the nature around us, the seasonal cycles, these are all incredibly powerful forces to have an awareness of. And I now in my life take these into account every day. But I wanted to sort of go into in this episode talking about essentially just sharing with you the first things that go into my diary, I'll say quote unquote, as I look ahead, which just FYI, I use the Magic of I moon planner. I can't remember if that's actually what it's called, but it's the moon diaries that Magic of I do. They also do journals and things which are incredible. And also, full disclosure, I don't get anything for mentioning this. I just fucking adore mine, and I can't wait for my 2022 one to arrive. And I just thought I would mention it because just in case you haven't heard of these types of diaries and planners, like definitely look into them if you feel called to, because there are a number of different styles and types and whatnot out there that might have different astrology focus or moon cycle focused. Some are like menstrual cycle focused, things like that. And that information is already printed out and included within them, and you're just kind of like filling in the relevant bits for you. And of course you can do this with just like a standard calendar diary, right? But I find I love, you know, particularly for me, Magic of I love that one because it has so much already written in there and like filled out for you. You just kind of like pick your, there's a couple of different time zones. So you pick which one is relevant for you. Obviously being here in Aotearoa, I think it's the like, Australia, New Zealand time zone, because in terms of the moon cycle and moon phases and planetary movements and things, we are like effectively a day ahead of other parts of the planet. So that's why there's different dates for you to make sure that you've got the right dates and times as for your time zone, let's say. So I wanted to share what are essentially, when I open my planner and my journal, these are the first things that go into my diary pages. So I've got, let's see, 4 different kind of topics that I wanted to just share with you and talk about, so that you can get an understanding of like, what are the most important things for me that I am looking to put into my planner, like say on a weekly or a monthly or a, you know, seasonal basis, before I basically even touch anything that is, let's say, work related, right? Like these are the very first things that go in. And then from there, I plan my soulpreneur work, my inspiration, my downloads, my creative time. But these are the things that go in first. So let me have a big sip of my coffee that's sitting here. And let's dive in. So the very first thing that will go in is the stage that I am at in my cycle, in my menstrual cycle, which forms the foundation for me of my own internal energetic expression. And I use this primarily to plan ahead and around when I am going to do work in my soulpreneur business, when I'm going to allocate time for creativity, time that is more focused, say, on planning, on doing all the things, on being more kind of like outwardly expressive and community focused, or times when I'm more creatively and internally focused, for example. So this is a very just like sweeping, broad touch point. It's not, I'm not going to go into the specifics of planning around your cycle just in this episode. That might come later. But that's the first and foremost, because that's my inner energy for me. And that's why that's the first thing that goes in. Then secondly is the moon and the moon cycle. So this for me personally is equally as powerful in terms of the way I structure and plan and, you know, live both my business and my life, basically, because it's kind of like, you know, depending on the phase of the moon, it really has an effect on me. And more recently, I've also been much more focused on the different like nuances of the energies of the moon as she moves through the different signs of the zodiac as well. So this is one of the things that lately and more recently, my guides have been really sharing with me in a much more direct way that it's become clearer and clearer to me just how deeply affected I am by the nuances of the moon. So, for example, you know, planning things around full moon, new moon, different things like different type, the major phases like that collectively we all experience, but also the different transits of the moon. You know, say, for example, understanding that for me, when the moon is in Aries or Leo, for example, it feels so fucking powerful for me. And I just can't wait to jump on Instagram and to chat on my stories and to do all the things, right? As opposed to a time when the moon is in Pisces, for example, when for me, I'm like all wrapped up in my deep introspective creative cave kind of feels. So that is, even though it's more of an external influence on me, it still is something that I have come to love about myself and acknowledge that I am deeply affected by it. So it's like that is a very close secondary thing that goes into my planning and my diary and my journaling, planning ahead, because it is such a huge influence on my energetic expression. So the two kind of go hand in hand for me, my menstrual cycle, but also the moon phases and cycles. Then number 3 of the third thing that I will then put in is essentially the cosmos and my individual astrology aspects of how they kind of like relate to planetary movements, what's going on. And this, essentially is the astrological houses and signs for my astrology and my chart, what I'm moving through. And this has been a lot newer for me this year. I mentioned in last week's episode how I have been taking a lot of time lately to be doing, a lot more studying and learning and expanding my knowledge of astrology, because that's been a real calling for me. And so this has been a big part of it, it's kind of been a real profound and empowering learning and just deeper dive into the unique energy that I am uniquely experiencing, moving from week to week and from month to month. So a quick example for this is, the past month for me, as I'm recording this, the previous month, leading up to this, has been my 12th house in my astrology chart. And it's also been Libra season that we all have collectively experienced. So essentially, as we move through the different sort of zodiac signs through the year, we might the sun might move into Libra, for example, or in this case it's just moved into Scorpio season. We all collectively experience that season, the energy of that, and the associations of that energy in that time. However, within your own unique astrology, you have 12 different houses, and each of those has its own unique aspect to your life that is highlighted when different planets are in those houses. So someone experiencing, say, 12th house, a 12th house period of time, it's very, very different to, say, if you're going through your 5th house or 6th house, for example. And so 12th house energy is big death, rebirth, spiritual transformation. And so that for me was the divine timing of taking a break from social media, for example, being very inwardly focused and kind of allowing for that season of going into my chrysalis and turning to complete caterpillar goop, before I come out the other side. Whereas as I'm now transitioning into my 1st house in my astrology, that energy is very much about our outward facing self, our identity, who we are, how we interact with the world. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that it's been really powerful and aligned for me, to know what seasonality of my astrology and kind of the planetary movements is going on. Because in the past, I definitely, 100% would have been blindly pushing on past that feeling of my intuitive side going, hey, this is a more stepped back or introspective time, and it's so necessary for me to take this time to recharge and to go inwards and, to turn into the caterpillar goo and all of that. But I would have fully plowed on past that. My undefined route would have gone, no, we have this massive fucking to-do list, and my, gate 28, fear of running out of time, would have been no way, you can't afford to take time off right now, you can't afford to stop posting on Instagram, you have to be consistent, you have to do all the things, you have to tick off all these tasks every day in order to be considered successful. And I would have judged myself really fucking hard for kind of being in a more slower paced energy, right? So please say that no longer is my reality, but that's my experience that I've been through. So if you have had those moments where you're why the fuck do I just feel like I'm not with it this month, or I just can't get motivated, or there are so many nuances to it. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of like share that and see and witness and, you know, reassure you that this is the understanding. Like, if you're only just coming to this, that's perfectly fucking okay. And it is so important that you just like, you know, take that approach of going, actually, you know what, fuck, this is the perfect timing for me to come to this, because I've been through the experiences when it was tough and I struggled and I burnt myself out, or I, you know, had that kind of like on your knees moment of there's got to be a better fucking way, or like, I can't believe this is it, you know, like, this is shit, this sucks, right? Like, because fuck, I've been there. Anyway, so for as I say, this is the sort of stuff that also goes into my planner, so that I can understand where I'm at, both personally in terms of what house I'm moving through in my astrology, but also what we're collectively experiencing. So right now, as I'm recording this, it's Scorpio season, so we are collectively experiencing that Scorpio energy and that Scorpio vibe. So there's an understanding that goes into my soulpreneur work, and my plans for my work and what I am, you know, cultivating, curating, so that I can, you know, understand not only what I'm going through, but it allows me to bring an empathy to the work I do and my clients and things, in that I know kind of like that everyone around me is going through a similar, you know, energy in terms of, say, our collective season we're in, but there's also the nuance about like somebody else might be going through a completely different, you know, house in their astrology, for example. And then number 4, let me take another sip of my coffee. That was a real tangent about planning around those things. So it's funny what, like, I suddenly find myself that I'm like, oh, that really lit a fire under your throat chakra. Anyway, so number 4 is the seasonal aspect. That's what I then add in. So this is bringing my awareness to essentially where we are at collectively in our seasonal cycles with Mama Nature in mind, or as my witchy self would say, this is essentially the wheel of the year. So bearing in mind, as I talk about this, I live in the southern hemisphere here in Aotearoa, so also quite far south in the South Island. So we have a wheel of the year essentially here that I experience that has distinct seasonal changes, right? We've just recently transitioned from winter into spring, and that means that right now we're just about to celebrate Beltane, which is essentially the halfway point between the spring equinox and summer solstice. And for those of you listening at the time that I'm recording this, if you're in the northern hemisphere, it'll be Samhain for you, which also for any of you who this is all like, whoa, I've never heard of this before. You might also see that spelt, when it's spelt out, it's spelt Samhin. And for a lot of people, when they're first coming across that, wouldn't have a clue how to pronounce that. So from what I understand, it's Samhain, not Samhain, which for a lot of people, if you only saw it written down for the first time, you would have no idea. And I am not a judgy witch, because I know how easy it is to criticize people's grammar and spelling and language when it's like, hello, you have no idea of anybody's lived experience or accessibility and all of that. So anyway, so that's what, if you're in the northern hemisphere, that's the name of essentially this upcoming festival or time. And I also just will say in the same breath as that I also spent years and years and years living right bang on the equator in Singapore. So there was a very different seasonality, being that it was hot and it was tropical weather, tropical climate all year round. And basically you didn't have seasons. However, there was like essentially a distinct wet season when it rained a lot more, and a dry season when it was, you know, really, really dry, that we experienced during the year. So it is fascinating to me, because obviously there's not just like one type of seasonal expression within Mama Nature, and how we all individually and collectively experience the seasons, and even here within Aotearoa, right? Like let's just say within an hour's drive or 2 hours drive of where I actually live, there is such a fucking range of climate expressions. Like if you go, we're here on the coast, we're at sea level, so we have quite a mild, let's say like winter season, but you only have to drive like an hour inland and it's full on like snow on the ground, freezing, all of that. And so it's just really fascinating to me because it's like, yeah, my version of winter is very mild and very chilled out, and it suits me down to the ground. But, one person's winter is not the same as another person's winter. So in talking about these things, it's understanding as well that like seasonal differences are going to be, important to take into account. So I do experience the seasons here, but I also know that like my version of, say, a winter time is very different to somebody else's version of a winter time. So anyway, I don't really know where I was going with that, but I guess it's the understanding and empathy for other people's version of seasons, I guess. And maybe what I'm trying to say here is that just because we might be going through a particular seasonality, let's just use winter as a really quick example. For some people, winter is going to be a real like, no, it's snuggled up in front of the fire, keeping warm. Days are really short. It's very introspective. It's very, quiet, taking time to recharge, all of that kind of vibe. And then for other people, winter might actually be quite a active time, if that makes sense. Either being that, the seasonality of it is that the weather doesn't actually change that much. Or it might be that it's actually a time of year for them that they're like doing all the things and they enjoy skiing and they enjoy going, tramping or like going out and being in nature. So, don't really know where I'm going with that, but I am sure that the message was transpired for whoever needed to hear that. So what I wanted to share in regards to this seasonal festival, essentially, that we're coming around to at the end of this week, I wanted to share some words from Rebecca Campbell, who's one of my just favorite authors and mentors, and she has some beautiful words around Beltane and also Samhain for those of you who are listening from the Northern Hemisphere. And I wanted to share some of Rebecca Campbell's words because I just think she's written it so beautifully, and I just wanted to quote her here. So she writes that Beltane is also about keeping your heart open and recognizing and celebrating love in all its forms. Themes include sacred union, fertility, beauty, and the balancing of opposites. As a festival day at a time when the land is becoming ever more fertile and lush, because remember, this is our, in the Southern Hemisphere, this is essentially our spring turning into summer time. When the land is becoming even more fertile and lush, it also has a quality of sensuality, reminding us to reconnect with and take care of our physical bodies. This is the perfect time of year to consider what energizes us and lights us up, what fills you with passion and inspires you. Which I think I really love that because it's this fertile, lush season, and I see it so much as I'm driving around at the moment. We've got lambs that have just been born. We've just had all our daffodils come out. And all the new growth like in our garden and things like that. So that's the season that I'm, interacting with energetically, and it transpires into my soulpreneur work as well, right? And now what I wanted to share just quickly for those of you who are listening, who are in the Northern Hemisphere, what you, with Samhain. And Rebecca's words here are that Samhain acknowledges the coming of the darkness and going of the light. and is the seasonal opposite to what we are experiencing here in the Southern Hemisphere. And Samhain marks the halfway point essentially between the autumn equinox and winter solstice for those of you in the Northern Hemisphere. The word Samhain means summer's end and is a time of renewal as nature begins to bed down, ready to rest over the winter months. So too do we retreat indoors and begin to slow down our activities in favor of rest, recuperation, and quiet contemplation. Isn't that just beautiful? Sorry, I'm slurping on my coffee as I'm recording this podcast. Very unprofessional podcasting, right? There's all these like amazing podcasters out there who would like have someone edit out, but I'm like, no, just sitting here with my coffee in my hand, chatting away. Anyway, so I definitely feel all the feels when I read those words for the first time, because I know from many of my own past experiences in my life that there were so many fucking times when I just plowed on ahead, irrelevant of that kind of broader seasonality or cycle, inner and outer cycle, right? And I didn't bring any awareness to that collective energy that the wheel of the year empowers us to understand. And what was really interesting is that even this year, right? Like even after all that I've learned and, embody and all that, like I caught myself this year at that kind of end of winter time here, at a moment where I was like really judging myself and my business for not being more successful over those autumn/wintry kind of months, which is so at odds with the cyclical nature and awareness of, the collective energy that like half the world is going through, right? Like in the Southern Hemisphere. So yeah, it was a really funny kind of like light bulb moment that once I spotted it and realized that like I had slipped into a comparison trap, because of course, even though I was experiencing the beautiful gifts of autumn and winter and that slowing down and that, rest and recharging and all of that, so many people that I'm connected with and friends with and work with online and I was interacting with daily were right in the midst of their summer energy and that vibe of summer and, the peak sort of stage of what they were doing in their business and all the things and all the, offers. And so, yeah, it was a real kind of like, moment when I realized that I was like ignoring the seasonality of my own lived experience and just comparing myself to a stranger on the internet, right? So, of course, in this age of being an online soulpreneur, we might live and experience one season ourselves, while there are going to be like a whole heap of people in your soul community, in your soul family, in your, incredible client base, right, who are going to be in the polarity of a different vibration and a different energy. So I think essentially the biggest lesson I gained from that moment was like, it's powerful to step back and to take a pause and to appreciate that there are these different seasons to not only our own inner energies, but the outer energies and the processes. And we can exist in our own, whatever that cycle, whatever that season is, while getting to simultaneously still honor ourselves, show up in the way that is aligned for us, and get to serve those who might be simultaneously in a different season, a different cycle, in a different, energy and vibe. Because that's the beauty of the awareness, right? Is that we get to do, it's not like a either or world, we get to do both, and we get to do it in the way that aligns for us. And it really just, I guess, is that the awareness is the biggest thing. So yes, there are practical kind of planning style things that, if it calls to you, if it aligns to you, you can do to plan and to structure and to add logic to your, say diary. But I do believe that, the most important thing essentially with all of this that I've shared today is to bring awareness to what resonates for you. And everything flows from there, right? Like you don't necessarily have to do anything about it, but to just allow those intuitive nudges to speak to you loudly, and to give yourself the freedom to follow where those intuitive nudges take you. So, for example, take what resonates from this episode, leave what doesn't. You might want to dive into all of it. You might go, you know what, like this all feels like too much for me right now, so I just want to stick with what I know works. Like anything that aligns for you is perfectly fine. And it might be that you hear this now and then in like 6 months' time, something might come back around that you're like, oh yeah, I remember listening to that episode and now it feels like the right timing to put that into practice. So I think what I just hope that you'll take away from this episode is that essentially follow your intuitive nudges, follow that inner, kind of knowing that you have. And for example, if you're having a moment, whether it's a week, whether it's a month, where you maybe feel called to be a bit less social and have some more time on your own, follow that where that takes you, rather than judging yourself or beating yourself up because you haven't been doing all the things in your business this week. You haven't gone live on your Instagram. You haven't posted. You haven't showed your face on stories, right? Like, it's okay to have those seasonal changes. And now you know, like, what are the number of different things that could essentially be factoring into that. And you can work with that gift of your own inner or outer seasons that you're experiencing. Or conversely, if you suddenly have like this random burst of like super outgoing, chatty energy and you just spontaneously want to show up on video after like not doing it forever, just do it. Like, you don't have to judge yourself to be like, oh my God, well, I haven't been doing this, so why, like, my audience are going to be confused if I suddenly randomly just do a live out of nowhere. Like, just do it. Just lean into that energy. Like, there is obviously a timing and, a season within you or externally that is, calling you to share that energy or that voice or that, unique insight that you have. So you don't have to confine yourself to a rigidity or structure, and you certainly don't have to be cookie cutter consistent in order to share that incredible successful magic and to be and embody that incredible magical being that you came here to be. So I wanted you to take that permission slip today to lean into whatever season, whatever cycle you are in, to bring your awareness to it. Trust your inner guidance, trust your intuition, and come back time and time again to your strategy and authority. So I am going to leave that there for this episode, my beautiful earthling. I hope you have taken some aha moments away from it. I would love to hear from you if you use any of these cycles or seasons already within your Soulpreneur business, like I do. And I just am so grateful for you being here as always, and for listening in and for sending your energy my way, because it is the biggest privilege in the world. So I, as always, send you enormous virtual hugs from behind the microphone, and I will catch you on the next episode.